Hogwarts. Tell me a joke.
Are you a Dementor? You just took my breath away.
Like previous tutorials, this assumes a basic understanding of both the Rhasspy and conductor frameworks, and that you have both of those environments set up and ready for development. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is define an intent for our jokes. So we'll call the intent name jokes and specify the sentence that is used to trigger that intent. So let's just say, tell me a joke. We'll save that new intent and retrain Rhasspy. And let's make sure that that intent is recognized. And it is. So now we can jump over to the conductor and we need to define a handler for this new intent. So we'll call this jokes.py and start defining our handler. So like previous handlers, we need to inherit from the base. And we'll call this jokes handler. And this should be very familiar if you followed the previous tutorials about how to get a handler defined. We do need to wire in the name of the intent, so we'll just create a constant and we'll just call it jokes. And then we need to implement handle intent. So in this case, we're just going to say if intent if the name matches, then we're going to do something. And I know that I'm going to create a method called joke, so let's do that. And all this is going to do is just pass through to a jokes service that we'll create next. And it will invoke the joke method on that service. Okay, so what do we have here? So we've got the jokes handler, which extends the base handler. We've got our constructor defined, which passes in the jokes name, the intent name. And we have handle intent implemented to basically key off of that name and just invoke the joke method, which in turn passes a call over to the jokes service and invokes its joke method. So let's go ahead and create the jokes service. So if we jump over to services, we'll create a new file. Similarly, we'll call it jokes.py. And this should also look very familiar, like the other services that we've created. So we're going to import services base and import our base service, as well as we know we're going to need response. So then let's create our joke service class. Okay, and in the handler, we knew that we had a joke method, so that's ultimately what we need to create here. So we'll create a joke method, which in turn is going to do something. So now we need to get our jokes wired in. So you could do this a number of different ways. If you knew of some sort of API out on the internet that had a collection of Harry Potter jokes, you could of course interact with that API. What I did in this case is I just grabbed a bunch of jokes from a variety of websites, and I'm just going to save them off into a catalog that is saved on uh, within this module. It's not the most elegant approach. It's obviously hard coded. If you ever want to change the jokes, you would have to do a source code change. But just for purposes of simplicity, that's what we're going to do here. You could, of course, save this to a database that is running on your Raspberry Pi, where you're storing and maintaining this joke collection. So it's really up to you as to how you want to maintain the jokes. But we're just gonna I'm gonna copy and paste over some that I've already grabbed from the internet. I'll include some links to websites where I've fetched these from in the description of the video. So what we have here is a catalog constant with a collection of collections. So what each entry here represents, you can see that there is each entry in the collection is itself a collection, which is a collection of sentences. So here we can see a variety of jokes. How does Harry Potter get rid of a rash? With quit itch. So they're all very cheesy, very dad joke style, but they're delightful. So let's get rolling with actually returning these jokes in response to this method call. Okay, so as with most of these service methods, we're going to wrap it in a try catch block. And we'll raise a joke exception, which we still need to create. So the return value is going to be pretty simple here. Since what we have is a collection of collections, what we're just going to do is we're going to add some simple randomization. So we're going to randomly select one of these joke entries, and then we'll use a list comprehension to create a response object for each entry in these collections. So first things first, we're going to need to import the random module, so that way we can randomly select something from the collection. And now we can get away with just doing a list comprehension. So we're gonna, again, we always need to return a response. So for, let's see, yeah, in random, we're just gonna do a random choice from our catalog. I think that looks pretty good. So we're gonna do a random choice from the catalog, which will give us one of these random jokes. And since that is itself a collection, we're going to use a list comprehension to create a response object for each entry. This being an entry, for instance, and then this being an entry. So that way, whenever the uh, conductor is responding, it's going to process each of these individually with like a little pause in between. So it'll give it a nice interaction. So that way it's not just reading them off very quickly. It will read off the first response, pause, and then read off the second response. So I think that looks pretty good. We do need to define our exception though. So we'll just use the same pattern that we've used for other errors. We'll open up our errors package and jump into exceptions. And we'll just do this as a speakable exception as well. And we'll just call this, I don't know, joke failure. All right, so now we need to import that. And we'll also use the same get general failure function to populate an error message in the event of some unexpected failure here. All right, so now we can actually raise that in the event of failure. All right, so pretty simple. Now we can wire in our new handler and service. So we'll jump over to the conductor class and get this wired in. We gotta import them first. And again, this should look very familiar if you've followed along any of the other tutorials. Nothing new going on here. All right, got our joke service, and now we will do the handler. Okay, that should be, unless I'm missing something, everything that we need to do here. Got our return statements. Yeah, so the handler will come in, and that will invoke joke, which in turn will invoke joke on the service, which will grab a random joke from our catalog, and then return a collection of responses to speak out the joke. All right, let's run it and see if it works. Okay, so now we're going to turn on the handle capability so that way Rhasspy is going to actually transmit the intent over to the conductor. And hopefully we will hear a joke.
How do Death Eaters freshen their breath? With Dementos.
And sure enough, there we go. Cheesy Harry Potter dad joke. Gotta love it. All right, so let's test out the randomization. So in theory, we could get the same joke the next time we run this, but hopefully we'll get a different one.
Are you a Dementor? You just took my breath away.
There we go. All right, so now we've got some random Harry Potter jokes being served by our digital assistant. Uh, Wraps up this tutorial. This one was pretty simple. And again, you can make this as complex or simple as you like. You could expose an API, for instance, if you were saving your jokes to a database within the conductor, you could expose an API on the conductor to, programmatically manage those jokes, or you could keep it simple just like this and bake them into the module. So hope this was fun. I will catch you on the next one. Peace.